Well, hello. Today, we're going to be having a very thought provoking discussion with our guest, Hannah Gill. I jumped straight into the topic today because I'm very excited to be presenting you with the third coaching session that we've had on this podcast. We'll be exploring an internal conflict that so many parents can relate to, the tension between personal ambitions and the deep desire to be present for our children. Whether you're a mom or dad, this episode will unpack these opposing forces, which can create guilt, frustration, and even identity shifts. We'll also talk about the external challenges that often accompany this internal battle, like navigating differing expectations in a partnership and the societal pressures around career and parenting. By tuning in, you'll be gaining valuable insights into how to approach these struggles with compassion for yourself, your partner, and your children. So whether you're a parent trying to strike the right balance or someone supporting a partner through this journey, this episode is definitely for you. Let's get into it. Hi there. If this is your first time here, welcome to the Parenthood and Relationship Podcast. I'm your host, Markella Kaplani, a psychologist, a parenthood and relationship coach, and a parent myself. Together, we explore the transformative journey of parenthood and its profound impact on our relationship with ourselves, our partners, and our children, so that we can be present and show up as we envision without having to do more. Let's get into today's episode. Well, hello and welcome to today's podcast. This is the first time that we're doing this, and I'm really excited to have Hannah with me. Hannah, hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for being the first to come on this podcast and take the plunge. I would like to give you the mic and have you tell us a little bit about yourself and about why you're here with me today.
Yeah, so my name is Hannah Gill. I'm from the United States and I live in the state of Indiana with my husband and two kids. And what I do and my background is a little all over the place, but I work full time as a Salesforce analyst and administrator. And then I also have my own business on the side as a childbirth educator and doula. And the primary reason that I wanted to come on the podcast today deals a lot with my career and work in general, and my feelings of just struggle and internal conflict between continuing to work on my business as well as my full-time job while being the mother to my kids, because I have extreme feelings of guilt all the time. If I'm with my children, I feel like I should be working. If I'm working, I feel like I should be with my children. And I've just had this struggle ongoing basically since I had children. So that's the primary reason that I wanted to come on today.
Okay. How old are your children?
4.5 and 2. So they're still very
Okay.
young.
And it sounds like this is very new. This struggle and this internal battle that you're talking about is quite new.
Yes, it's very new. It's not something that I expected to happen before I had kids. I knew I just thought I was going to be working full time and that's what I was going to do forever. And I never ever thought I would start a business or do something different than what I had planned to do before kids. And I never thought I would have these feelings of questioning if I want to continue to work, especially about something I'm passionate about, or if I'd rather just be with my kids full time.
So can you describe to me a little bit about what's happening there in terms of it seems like there are two parts that are
Hmm.
battling internally
Yeah.
about where to go and what is best. Can you pick one of them and talk to us a little bit? Let's say, why don't we start with the part that is a little baffled, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong. It sounds like it's a little bit baffled about what's happening. This is not how we planned it. What's going on? Can you speak to me from that part and tell me what's going on for that part?
Yeah, so before I had kids, my husband and I, we've been together for a very long time since high school, and we both were of the understanding that we're both going to work. I'm going to continue working full time. I was actually planning to go to medical school after grad school, and then I got pregnant at the end of grad school. And after I had my son, who was my first, my values, wants, and needs completely changed after that. And I just had this very strong pull not to work at all, just to be a stay-at-home mom. And my husband is very, very against that for multiple reasons, primarily just the financial reason. And so after I had my daughter, who was my second, I had these feelings again, and I decided that I would kind of start this side business to as something I was passionate about. So being a childbirth educator and doula, to kind of fill that void of wanting to, if I still need to work, I would like to do something I enjoy doing. So I never thought that I would have the feelings of questioning working before or after having kids. And that's kind of the hardest part for me is I had planned to have this very intense career. My background's in the sciences, so it's just different to not want to have that anymore. And it very much surprised my husband when I brought that up to him.
Okay. So it sounds like there is an internal conflict and there's the external one as well
Hmm.
with your husband, and that's played a
Yeah.
role in the internal. Okay.
Yes.
And it sounds to me like there is a part of your identity that was very much
Hmm.
linked to that scientific part that was very excited about doing all the great things and the big things
Yes.
in the
Yeah.
career aspect. Okay. So what are the feelings that this question mark that you have about whether you want to be a stay-at-home mom or continue in that perspective? What are the feelings that this part has about the fact that you're even
Yes.
questioning?
Yeah. So the fact that I've been questioning, like you said, there's like an identity shift there because I've always been like a high achiever, always wanting to learn more, do more, be more. And at first, when I had these feelings, I almost felt guilty for like, well, why don't I want to go and use the 2 degrees I have and continue learning and continue my education and do these things and help provide for my family. And it was a feeling of guilt there, but there was a big identity shift. And it was hard for me because I've been that way my entire life. I've been this overachieving person. And now I just feel the need to, I feel like my biggest achievement and my biggest thing I could be doing right now is being with my kids and raising them to be the next leaders and the next entrepreneurs or next doctors or whatever. And I just feel this very strong urge to be with them and raise them. But then I have this pull of, but I also want to have my own identity outside of being a mother too. So it's just very, very confusing for me.
Hmm. It
Mhm.
sounds like the part of you that wants to stay at home or work on the side business keeps taking
Hmm.
over the conversation. And so
Yes.
the guilt that you feel is a very valid feeling. And but it
Hmm.
sounds like it's coming from the part that wants to stay at home more with the kids. I am
Yeah.
still wondering, what is that other part feeling in regards to this identity shift and this very valid need that your other part has?
Yeah, so I feel like that side of it, so that high achieving self,
Mm-hmm.
the self that's career driven, it makes me almost want to, instead of working on the science side of things, take this side business and make it a full-time thing and then go all into that. So that's more because it's something I'm passionate about, but I feel like I could do great things in that area. So it wouldn't be like completely staying home and taking away that aspect of myself, but kind of transferring it to a different field that I may have never expected to be in, but
Mm.
still achieving in that area as well.
Right. Okay. So can I try to put some words into the feelings that you are alluding to? And you
Yeah.
pick and choose which ones sound correct. So it sounds like it's betrayed,
Hmm.
betrayed that you would do all this work and it's achieved so much, but then don't I need to show it somehow? Aren't you going to
Right.
allow me to show all this greatness that I've achieved and I've put sweat and tears into?
Hmm.
And it sounds probably a little bit angry. But it
Hmm.
also sounds like it's trying to find a middle ground and it's saying, okay, well, if things are not going to go my way, let's at least have this other thing that you're passionate about and let me put all my energy into that and let me
Hmm.
show my worth and my abilities through that.
And I feel like like you said, the words betrayed and angry have a lot to do with more of like the external conflict, especially with, well, I guess internal too. So I feel like my husband feels he was kind of shocked and blindsided, felt betrayed that I was questioning wanting to continue to work. Um, Definitely anger on both sides, potentially a little bit of resentment on both sides because we both felt like we were right in how we were feeling. Um, and then also with myself, like I almost betrayed myself by going to grad school and spending all this money and time and effort on getting my degrees, but at the same time having this feeling of not wanting to do that. So yes, I would agree, like betraying myself and what I thought I wanted with my life.
Then comes the other part that kind of notices this, and that's why it feels very guilty for having this need to stay at home with the children.
But then
Can you?
also that
Mm.
it's hard to like let go of that, like that high achieving self. So that's where I'm like back and forth. Like my high achieving self feels guilty for wanting to be home. But then when I'm home with my kids, I feel guilty because I want to be out there doing more. So it's very back and forth.
Hmm. A lot of times, this comes from this expectation that we have, and it's usually not very conscious, that it should all happen at once. And that if I pick one,
Hmm.
I'm only picking that, and that's how it's going to go over the other. And
Yes, I
so
completely agree with that.
a lot of times it can be quite helpful to remind ourselves very consciously to bring it to consciousness to say, it will wait for me. If I
Hmm.
decide that right now I want to spend more time with my kids, it's not like I'm choosing this path over the other. I'm choosing this path for now. And it's not
Right.
going to be too late. So I'm wondering, is there some kind of a fear that time is running out, or that you'll let it go and it will be that all of the money and the time and the effort you've invested will go to waste? Is there something that makes it be more compelling or more of a pressure and overwhelming that I need to decide now which one, either
Yeah.
or?
I think the hardest part for me is my kids are still very young, but they're only young for so long. So that part of me feels like if I want to be with them and really when especially when they need me, these are the years that they're going to need me the most in this way. And I mean, they could always need me, but this is the time where these first like 5 to 6 years of their lives are very, very important to me. And I don't want to miss that. I've had so many people tell older relatives and my mom and our parents and just say like those years go by so fast. So I just want to be in them and present with them. But then as far as work goes, specifically like the side business type of thing is I've also kind of realized that if this is truly something I'm passionate about, it will be there once my kids are fully in school or once they're a little bit older. Because I'm a doula and childbirth educator, people aren't going to stop having babies. That's always going to be a need. So as far as that goes, but then also my full-time job, my regular work, I feel like if put that on hold, am I going to be competitive in the workforce? Am I still going to have that edge and be up to date on things, specifically in tech as far as Salesforce goes? So just kind of that worry of when is the timing right? What will truly wait for me and what will not? So yeah, I agree. That's kind of a fear back and forth on that too.
Yeah, but it doesn't sound like, on the other hand, that you would be the type of person to not be eager to do an extra course or something of that sort in order to get yourself up to speed. If it so happens
That's
that,
very true. Yeah, because
right?
yes, I've done a lot of schooling and I constantly want to learn and do that. So that is a valid point. So if I did take a break from working and then go back, I would have no issue getting caught back up on things.
So on the logical level, you seem to have it down. It sounds like you try to put logic into it. You try to speak to all your parts, and with
Mhm.
logic, it seems you've got it down. So there's an emotional blockage happening here.
Mhm.
What do you sense that it might be? Something that
I
could be
think,
irrational if we were to talk about it in those terms. So it will probably sound like it's irrational because you know logically that that's not the case, but it's something
yeah,
you feel nevertheless.
almost feeling like my kids will know that I did not focus on them in these years, and they'll look back and resent me or be angry at me and wonder why I wasn't there more or why I was constantly working. And that might be due to a lot of my parents always worked. My mom was never home, so that could be a lot to do with how I grew up too, and wanting to have them to have a different childhood than I had. So I could see that as being part of it for sure. Just worrying that they're going to fully comprehend what's happening. And I don't know if my 2-year-old knows that I'm working a lot, but she might. And that's what I fear that they're going to grow up and be like, gosh, mom, you were never there. Why were you always working?
Right. So see, that definitely hits the spot. And when you were
Hmm.
saying it, I felt like there was more emotion coming from you as I'm looking at you, those who are listening, they can't see you, but I felt that there was a deep feeling coming out there.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, how is the other part, the high achieving part, relating to all of this? It sounds like it doesn't have enough compassion for this part of you that needs to kind of reparent and mend things. Because this is what motherhood does. It allows us to
Yeah.
have a deep look at ourselves, at our wounds, and the way that we will show up for our children if we are able to completely accept what we want to do differently and be okay with it and be in
Hmm.
flow. We are actually also resolving our own traumas. But
Yeah.
at this point, it sounds like a part of you is really there. It's ready to
Hmm.
work on this and to get past it and to reparent yourself while you decide to take a different route as you parent your children. But then
Hmm.
another part of you, the high achieving part, is saying no. And so I'm wondering where that part might be coming from. How could
Hmm.
it be linked to your childhood?
Probably, well, specifically like more like middle school and high school. I was always, and also my personality type, I'm an Enneagram too. I constantly feel the need to be wanted, loved, desired, and to meet other people's needs and expectations outside of my own. So middle school and high school especially, I was constantly doing things and taking more courses and doing more activities because I knew it would look good on college applications. So I was constantly doing things, whether or not I really truly wanted to do them because I felt that I was expected to do them. So I'm always looking outside of myself for that validation and for the kind of like you're doing a good job. We need you here. We want you to be here. So I feel like I have to do all the things regardless if I actually want to do them because it's almost expected of me. So my high achieving self feels like, okay, because you are high achieving, and because you have multiple responsibilities, multiple roles, like you need to do all of them and you need to do all of them great. And you need to not quote unquote fail at any of them. So I have my full-time job, which is about 30 hours a week. I have my side business, which I work on too. And then I have my role as a wife, a mother, and just an individual person. That part of myself is saying you must do all of these things and you must do them well. And if you don't, then overall you're just failing. So that's where that side of things is coming from for sure.
Now, what does failure mean?
I think it depends on your own definition of failure. Mine in this specific situation is that you chose, like speaking to myself, like you chose to take this on and you're going to see it through. And if you don't, that is failing. So the fact that I did start the side business as a response to honestly, as a response to birth trauma is why I became a doula and childbirth educator. The fact that I started it, I feel like I have to finish it. I feel like I can't put that on hold, so I must finish that. And then obviously being a mother, you can't put that on hold. That's just something you have to do. And then my full-time job is something that I have to do for financial reasons, whether or not I truly want to do it or not. So it's just trying to figure out where that failure would come in to me personally, like why I would feel like I'm failing. It's just not fully meeting those expectations of myself to see those things through.
How did you get acceptance and love as a child?
I feel like from my perspective, it was doing well at things. I was the first child, I was the oldest. So I felt like I just had high expectations put on me. And I was always a good student. So I felt like if I continued to do that and if I excelled at sports and activities and stuff, that's how I got love and acceptance. I felt like the most, especially from my mom. She and I was one of those people that if I was hard, I was probably harder on myself if I got bad grades, like B's or C's were my definitions of bad grades. But I felt like that from her too. And I don't know if it was just because I was the first and my brother, who's second, was completely opposite of me. So I felt like I had to continue to achieve and excel at everything I did. So that was mainly it, just through achievements is how I felt like I was loved and accepted.
It sounds like it was also your example. This is what you saw from your
Mhm.
parents. They
Mhm.
were high achievers as well. They were working very hard.
Yeah.
So there was that example.
Hmm.
And then if you pair it with,
Right.
I get accepted when I also sign up for many things and I do great at them, I
Hmm.
feel like I'm part of the tribe. So this
Right.
part of you that you say is probably even harsher than your mom ever was with your
Hmm.
own self, it sounds like it was protecting you because
Yeah.
before your mom could ever reject you, it made sure that it was so hard on you that you would make
Hmm.
sure to be great and then gain her love. Now, whether your mom
Yeah.
loved you unconditionally or she loved you based on the condition of you achieving is not
Hmm.
really relevant because
Hmm.
for you, something happened where the narrative was, whether it's true or not, I'm guessing it is, but it really doesn't matter in this case because for you it was true, so it is true that mom and dad maybe, but mom loves me if I am like her and if I
Hmm.
achieve. And so this part, the high achieving one, wanted to make sure that you're loved. When we're
Yeah.
children, we can't rationalize like we do as adults. We can't
Mhm.
say, hey, of course she loves me. I'm her child.
Yeah.
Now I'm a mom. I can see, of course I love my children. But that the child feels dependent and it feels like there's only hate or love for children.
Hmm.
There's nothing in between. There's no logic. It's like full feeling. And so if I feel this disappointment that, oh yeah, okay, I see. You could have done better. That could just
Hmm.
be it. It doesn't mean I don't love you. I was just commenting as an adult.
Right.
But for the
Hmm.
child, it's completely different. It's disappointment becomes, oh, I'm not loved.
Yeah. And I got the same for everyone, even like my coaches, my teachers. I saw their response of when I did well. So I continued to try to meet that level of achievement to be accepted and to get that positive feedback. Even if I got any slightly negative criticism, I would be harder on myself than they were probably being on me and still work to try to achieve even higher and higher and higher.
And so it makes sense that this part of you is also very concerned about motherhood because you
Hmm.
chose this. I wrote that down as you said it. I
Hmm.
chose it. So
Right.
you chose this. You have to excel at it. And what's
Hmm.
happening there? Again, we're dealing with someone else and whether they will accept you. And it's your children. You want them to love
Yeah.
you and accept you. And you want them
Mhm.
to grow up feeling good about their relationship with you and feeling
Right.
and being well-adjusted adults, happy adults,
Mhm.
independent. But at the same time, you also want them to be saying, I had a great mother, right? And
Yeah.
so it
Yes.
sounds like in any role that you take on, you have to ensure that you are meeting the expectations of others.
Right. And their expectations might not be, I may be perceiving their expectations differently than what they actually are. Um, I doubt my family wants me to be burning the candle at both ends and burning myself out to meet what I think their expectations are. But that's how I feel personally. That's how I perceive their expectations. And then my expectations are probably even harder than what theirs are to meet.
Yeah, because that provides a safety blanket. If you are way harder on yourself, you've made sure to show up in a way that no one will get to complain.
Right.
Hmm. But then how about those other parts that need rest and need to just be?
Yeah. And I feel like the further I get into being a mother, the more I truly realize that I need to take care of myself too. Back in January of this year is when I truly hit like the point where I just wasn't doing well physically or mentally because I was trying to do everything perfectly. And that's when I started really questioning. My biggest struggle is questioning whether I should continue doing my side business or not, because it's taking me away from not only my kids, but myself and how I'm going to balance that and set boundaries. And that's like the hard part for me right now is I almost put an ultimatum on myself of time limit, like at the end of the year, if you're not truly happy and you keep questioning and going back and forth, then you just need to like quit this. So that's my biggest struggle right now. After hitting that period of burnout in January, it was really bad. So
The job that you have right now, I'm sorry if you mentioned this before, is it related to what you studied initially?
Sort of. Before January, it was January. I actually switched roles because of how stressed out I was. So it was science related, but it's not super related to my degree. So my master's is in forensic biology. My plan was to go into forensic science and then eventually go to medical school to be a forensic pathologist. And so I started working at a local biotherapeutic laboratory, which is science based. And then once I got a little bit further into motherhood, I realized I wanted to not be on the science side of things because of the way the schedule was. And it would make me work longer hours. And now I'm able to work from home and I only work 30 hours a week now instead of 40. So
So there's that perk.
Yeah, that has been a nice adjustment, because before when I did hit that period of burnout, I was working 40 hours a week in the office. Again, I did have a flexible schedule where I could leave to take my kids to appointments and stuff if needed, but it was still in the office away from home. And then I would come home in the evenings, take care of the kids. My husband and I would put them to bed, all that stuff. And then after they went to bed, I would stay up and work on my business until 2 a.m. every single night and then get up at 6 a.m. and repeat. So I was just trying so hard to do everything at one time and have it all do well. So,
A lot of times it's easier to look at the internal struggle if we look at the closest relationships that we have. So I'm
mhm.
wondering if it's okay to go back to what you were saying about your husband and how he
Yeah.
also contributing to this dilemma. The work that you have, the 30-hour work that you have right
Mhm.
now, is that something that is helping financially and is something that was part of the plan that the two of you had made or no?
Yes. Yeah. So it is. And because he just wanted me to just be working and contributing in some way because we have a lot of just financial things where I really do have to work. A lot of people, they may or may not have to work. It might just be a kind of a nice thing for them to work, but ours is where I physically do have to work to contribute. So yes, it's not related directly to my degrees, which he's not concerned about that as long as I'm doing something that I feel good about and I'm making money and I'm positive that I want to be doing it. So yeah, it was part of the plan. It'd be different if I was, I don't know, doing something completely different, which is why he was concerned about me taking a side business full time because it doesn't have the stability, the security, and the consistent income that a full time job does. So
And how does that ring for you? When you first had this
I am.
conversation and he expressed these worries, how was it and how is it now?
Yeah. Yeah. So we went through about a 6 months of constant just back and forth and just disagreements about it. My thing is I'm the type of person that I get bored very easily and I've changed jobs so many times over the years. That's just been how I have operated. And I always find something different I want to be doing after my bachelor's instead of going to work and starting to make an income there. I wanted to go back to school and went to get my master's. And so I wasn't working during that time at all. So I was not working. And then we were paying to pay for my degree. And then I get pregnant during grad school and then everything kind of changes. So we spent all this money and time and my husband worked extra hours, extra shifts, overtime, put all of his bonuses and everything towards money for my degree. So that's where his hesitation was really coming from. Like we just spent all these years and money and time for you to get this extra degree and now you don't want to work. So it was like he almost felt disrespected and hurt by that. So he was very just blindsided and kind of shocked by it. And that was his primary hesitation was we have all this time and energy that we put into this and now you don't want to do it. So that was his main concern. And mine was, well, it's okay. Like I'm still going to be working. So why does it matter what I'm doing or how often I'm working as far as like taking my side business full time? Because I almost wanted him to see because the high achiever in me was like, I know I'm going to be successful at this. It may not be overnight, but I know it's going to happen. And I felt like he was doubting that I would be successful. And then that like was a whole other spiral of things. Like, don't you see that this is something that I could be successful at? And then once I started seeing that like things from his point of view more, things kind of shifted a little bit because I understood his point of view of like he put things on the back burner for himself in order to put me through grad school. So yeah, it was about 6 months of a lot of back and forth on that.
What helped you see his point of view? Can you
I
recall?
think, yeah, I think it was mainly understanding like how he operates as a person because he thrives on stability, consistency, security, routines, that type of thing. And he is very anxious when it comes to finances. So seeing that and understanding like where he was coming from, like, okay, I see that we just spent all this money for me to go and get this degree and how all that money we spent on the degree could have been put towards something else to help our financial stability. And now I'm saying I don't want to work or I want to take on a job that is not consistent and could like being self-employed has a lot of risks. So understanding like that risk benefit analysis that like he was coming from, and not that understand that he felt disrespected. And from my point of view, I was like, I'm not disrespecting you. I'm just trying to do what I love doing. But when you really look at how someone's feeling and how they operate and their personality type that really helped me to understand. And I think helping him understand my point of view was that it's different to be a father than it is to be a mother. And he understood that this side business came out of a place of trauma for me. And it may have not been as traumatic of an experience for him, but it was for me, which is why I feel so pulled towards it and passionate about it. And just understanding that becoming a parent is different for each parent. So we kind of both were able to see each other's side of things a little bit better.
There's a lot that I want to comment on here, but if the one thing that I'm going to go to, if you feel comfortable describing it,
Mhm.
because you've mentioned it a couple of times, is the trauma that led you to start your own side business. Would you like to tell us about that?
Yeah, I can bring that into it because it's really shaped a lot of everything really. So with my first child, my son, I had an unplanned and very traumatic C-section experience that physically and mentally affected me. And I kind of just questioned why it happened. And I didn't understand why it happened because a C-section, especially, was never really on my radar for planning. And I knew more often than not 1 out of 3 women had C-sections, but I just never thought it would be me in the way it happened. And everything was just very traumatic for me. So that is kind of what sparked me to become a childbirth educator, to learn more about the birth process and to become a doula as well for supporting women through that. So that's really what sparked everything. And being our first child, like my husband, he may not have understood like that was a traumatic thing, or he may have questioned like why it was traumatic for me, especially because his mom also had 2 C-sections. I don't know if hers were traumatic for her or not. It's never been discussed with me, but he may have just not known a difference on if that was normal or not and why it could potentially be traumatic for me.
Was there a lack of agency there? Were you not given the choice to decide
Yeah,
this is
it was more like I thought I was prepared and I really wasn't, and I didn't know my options in birth other than just my basic childbirth education class. I didn't know I could say no to things if I didn't want to. I
Mhm.
didn't know how to prepare because I wanted to go unmedicated and I didn't go unmedicated, but I didn't know how to prepare for that. I didn't know that I could push in different positions, like that type of thing. I didn't know what was normal and what wasn't. And C-sections were never really discussed with me as a potential possibility ahead of time, other than just briefly discussing it during my childbirth education class. Like, I just thought they were more for emergencies or certain complications, but mine really wasn't. Mine seemed to be, to me personally, like avoidable and preventable if different actions would have been taken. So, because it wasn't like an emergency, it was more just you've been pushing for 4 hours, you're both stable, but this is probably what we should do. And then I was really confused on why it was happening.
Yeah, and you know this way better than I do. It's your area of expertise, but at that point, I think we're very vulnerable, especially when
Mhm.
it's the first time that we're having a
Yeah.
child. And
Mhm.
so it's very easy for us to be coerced into something because we aren't sure what's happening. And so I
Right.
think your area of work is so important for a lot of women. For me, I felt like I had a natural birth. Thankfully, it went along this way. But in Greece specifically, we have the highest percentage of C-sections in Europe. And the reason for that is that a lot of doctors will say that it's necessitated a lot of times
Hmm.
because if you're going to give birth in the summer, they want to be on vacation. They don't want to be on call.
Right.
So, they'll schedule you in
Hmm.
before they leave. A lot of other times because they don't want to have to wait for 15, 20 or whatever many hours for you to
Hmm.
give birth because they've got so many clients.
Right.
So in a lot of cases, there are women that feel that their wishes were disrespected and that they were
Hmm.
told that they had to have a C-section, even though they were appeased that they were having a natural birth. But going back a little bit to what you were saying, it sounds like there was this whole new purpose created as you became a mother through
Hmm.
this traumatic experience. A whole new purpose was created about how you wanted to help women be in a better position to advocate for themselves in this
Hmm.
situation. And
Yeah.
so I get the conflict that's happening there because there was this part of you that was on a particular path for so many years. And it sounds like this was also reflected from your husband back to you. It feels like, my God, we invested so much in this in so many
Yes.
ways, in so many
Hmm.
levels. How are you going to throw it away? But then the other thing doesn't seem at all unimportant. It
Hmm.
seems like a life purpose that has come through what you went through. You
Yeah.
took an experience that was traumatic to you, and a purpose was created. And so
Hmm.
it makes sense now, putting it through this perspective, why this conflict is happening internally, because they both seem quite loaded.
And even after my birth, like my high achieving self was like, you just failed. You failed at birth. Why couldn't you do what you're just made to do? So I also felt like I failed. It was my fault. I obviously made the wrong decisions. And that what was going through my head was you failed. So now you have to figure out how to come back and do better and not fail and help other women not fail. And that was my first mentality was like, your body failed. You failed because you didn't advocate for yourself. You didn't take the proper steps to make the right decisions and that type of thing. So that side of myself was, okay, here is where like you failed and how can you make that better next time?
So it sounds like it was born out of a very critical place from an inner
Hmm.
critic that was very harsh on you.
Yeah.
And you had to make things better. Okay. How many things can you make better at the same time, though? And how
Not not
good can
many.
you be?
Yeah, and that's what that's I've had to do a lot of I'm starting to do a lot of just like personal reflection and truly understanding like at a deeper level, not just a surface level, on how my own thoughts about myself, my self-limiting beliefs, my criticism of myself, because I just assume that everyone else feels the same and they don't. So yeah, I've had to really take a step back to set boundaries and prioritize like what out of all these things you're trying to do, out of all these things you're trying to excel at, like what are the absolute necessities? What are the non-negotiables? What are things that can be potentially be put off or done to a lesser extent and still succeed? So I've just always been of the mentality that I can do everything and I can do it all perfectly until I got to this point, and I can no longer feel like I can do that. So,
The thing is that you're going to encounter resistance if you don't replace it with something. So if you are
hmm.
wondering, how do I let this go, at least for a
Hmm.
little bit? How do I put a pause on this? And how do I choose what to do? It
Hmm.
has to also answer, who am I letting down?
Right.
And it sounds like in each case, whichever way you go, and if you choose, for instance, to put on pause the side business
Hmm.
and all the great work that you want to do there, and you say, okay, I'll pause that, it's not about pausing and not trusting that you will be able to do it in the future. It
Hmm.
sounds like you have confidence in your capabilities. You don't
Hmm.
lack confidence. It's not that you believe that if you go back 5 years from now, you're not going to know what to do and you're not going to be able to offer
Right.
things. But what it sounds like is you will be letting someone down. In this case, maybe it's
Yeah.
the women that are
Hmm.
waiting. There's so many, this number of women that could have worked with me are going to not have me as an option. There's going to be one less person there serving these women that need to be
Hmm.
helped, and maybe also letting a part of you down that, I didn't have this, but by doing it for other women, I am also healing myself.
Yeah.
So if you don't replace this with something different of how you can heal yourself through that,
Hmm.
if you're not doing it through that process, how are you doing it? If you don't
Yeah.
replace that somehow in a different way, and that could be something that's not as time consuming and as something that you
Hmm.
have to invest so much time in and taking
Right.
such an emotional toll, but there does need to be something that replaces it.
Yeah. And I feel
And
like for me, that would probably be something like learning because I always want to learn new things. So either like fitness would probably be one of them, or learning how to like meditate because I've always wanted to learn how to meditate. So I could channel that energy into something that brings me more peace and less stress, less questioning, because those are at least exercising are things I can do with my children. So I could spend time with them versus where I'm working on my business. And yes, I'm passionate about it, but it takes me away from my children because it's not something I can really do with them present and fully be focused on it. So yeah, I would definitely have to replace in some way to kind of heal and focus my my energy and my passions towards something different.
Yeah. Because if we see it from an outside perspective, it sounds like everything that you do, you're doing it to not let someone down. And so, in the long term, it's important that you work on not feeling the need that you have to
Hmm.
be the one that holds everything and everyone, right? But
Right.
in the short term, in order to appease you from this intense need to do everything for everyone,
Hmm.
the short term strategy would be, what can I do that is not this, which takes so much time
Hmm.
and so much emotional toll, that I can put it toward feeling better, but not feel like I'm letting anyone go, anything
Yeah. So
completely.
something I could do that would not, like, no one else would have an expectation of, essentially. So by doing something that it's not trying to help anyone else or trying to about myself, just do something for myself, because then if anyone's let down, it's just myself versus letting everyone else down is what I feel like. So it would have to be something that it doesn't require input from anyone else, or it doesn't have to meet anyone else's expectations or what I perceive as their expectations, I guess. So something fully just for myself, pretty much.
Right. But even you leaving the side business, it's you letting a part of you down.
Yeah.
So it's important that you answer to this part and find a different way that it's held, but
Hmm.
not with you having to fight this hard
Right.
at this
Right.
point in time when you are also doing so many other things.
Yeah.
Before we close, I do want to ask, you said something beautiful about the way that you were able at some point to see things from your husband's point of view and to
Hmm.
understand where he's coming from. And it was so compassionate and so considerate of his side. You really put yourself empathetically in his shoes. And I'm
Hmm.
wondering if you have been able to do that with the part of you that really sounds like a lot like your husband, that part of you, the high achieving part that's very
Yeah.
angry and resentful
Mhm.
and betrayed by the
Yeah.
fact that you are looking to something else right now. Have you been able
Yeah.
to be as compassionate with yourself and with that part that's very critical?
I don't think I've tried. I think that's one thing I haven't really addressed yet, because I still just I'm constantly critical of myself about lots of things. So I definitely should probably do that and try to be more compassionate with myself like I am with others. Because seeing things from other people's point of view, I also need to see things from a different part of me's point of view.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
that's probably my next step.
Well, whether it is that you will continue it in the near future or you will be
Mm.
taking a small break, I would like for you to speak to us a little bit more about what it is that you do and how you help women currently through your work. Give me all the things and
Yeah.
how women can
Yeah.
find you because I think it's so important.
So I'm a doula and childbirth educator, like I mentioned, but I focus specifically on vaginal birth after cesarean, so VBAC, and really helping women take ownership of their birth and look inside themselves for the power versus to external sources for their power, and knowing their rights and their options and what all they have the ability to do. So that's really what I focus on, and I also help other doulas support VBAC clients because of this advocacy portion and the pushback that comes with VBAC. But I'm on my website and my podcast primarily. I'm trying to take a little bit of a break from social media, but my website is thehannahgill.com. My Instagram is at thehannahgill. And then my podcast is Motherhood Flow with Hannah Gill. So all of that has VBAC content on it, and I'm working on some courses. I'm in the process of making, again, since I am scaling back a little bit. I'm just making all of these things a lot slower than I had started before, but that's what I do, and that's where people can find me. So
I'll put all the links in the show
mhm,
notes for everyone to go ahead and find you. I've listened to your
mhm.
podcast. It's wonderful. You give
Thank
so
you.
much insight and perspective, and there's a lot that we can learn from you so that we can feel empowered in
Mhm.
our next birth if we've had something traumatic happen to us or
Yeah.
in
Mhm.
preparing for the first one, right?
Yeah.
hopefully women find you before they have their first birth, and then they can have
Yes.
as a successful and empowered birth as possible. But then VBAC is also very, very empowering, I've heard,
Yeah.
for many women that I've worked with and talked to.
I have to get to the point where there's not as much feedback education needed because those primary C-sections aren't happening as often. So,
Yes. That's wonderful. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Hannah.
yes, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Bye. I'm so grateful to Hannah for being so open and being here with us today. As we wrap up this powerful session, we've gained so much insight into the struggles that parents face when balancing career, identity, and parenthood. Through Hannah's heartfelt story, we've seen how deeply internal and external expectations shape our decisions. She had a certain identity that came along with what it is that she studied and how it is that she wanted to progress in her scientific endeavors. And then kids come along and her needs and her wants and her values, they start to shift. Her identity starts to become different. She wants something else now. She wants more time with her kids, and she's also very passionate about helping other mothers not have to go through what she went through, the birth trauma that she had to endure. But now she is at the stage where she's trying to reconcile these two identities. The one that she was building over so many years, one that is based on so much effort that she had to make, but also financial investments that both she and her husband made, time investment, that another part of her is now wanting to leave behind and start something new. There's a rational side that says, you can't throw all that away. And then there's an emotional side that says, you have a different calling now. And Hannah's at a place where she needs to be able to reconcile these two parts, give them both room to breathe, to express themselves, so that she can first and foremost understand what is really driving her. And then to be able to bring that to her husband and for them together to figure out a solution that doesn't harm the relationship. Because do you now see, this is a great example of, here is how I am changing through motherhood. And this is how it's affecting the relationship too. Because in itself, it's hard to accept that I've put so much effort and so much expectation and so much money and time into something. And now, oh my gosh, I'm wanting something else. And oh, the risk that this may entail and all the time. And so we have to work through those fears. And as we work through them, we're also in a committed relationship with our partner who is also expecting certain things of us because we have a certain dynamic and a certain way that the family unit has been functioning until now. And our change is going to shift this dynamic, even if he isn't changing. But of course, we know both parents change because of parenthood. But even if we just put the one partner on the side for now, looking from Hannah's perspective and from every Hannah's perspective, every mom's perspective who may be feeling this shift, this need to do something different, we can understand how this does not only affect Hannah's psychology and Hannah's decisions, but also it influences the way that she relates to her husband. It influences the interactions that they have and how supported she may feel and how disillusioned he may feel with all of this that's happening. And it's really important to recognize that all these feelings are valid and that there needs to be a very clear conversation and empathy and compassion from both sides in order for this to run as smoothly as possible. And this is where the work that I do with couples comes in, because when we're able to slowly start peeling the layers and understand that on an individual level, this is how I'm changing, this is what triggers me, this is what parenthood has brought forward. And then as a couple, we start to see, oh, and that is how they are changing. And this is how they are feeling. And this is how it's difficult for them. Okay, now we get to find a middle ground. Because if we both hold steadfast to our positions of what is right and what is valid, we aren't going anywhere. And so here are some key strategies we discussed for navigating this journey. One is shifting our mindset. Recognize that choosing one path for now doesn't mean closing the door forever. Number two, we can communicate compassionately. Foster understanding with your partner by empathizing with their perspective while also expressing your needs. Number 3, we discussed prioritizing self-care or self-connection, which is my favorite way to describe what it is that we really need. And we can do this by identifying an activity that feeds our soul and isn't tied to external expectations. This could be exercise for some people, journaling for others, or even learning a new skill. Number 4, it's vital that we set realistic expectations. So define what truly needs your focus in the now and what can be delayed without feeling guilty for putting it in the back burner. And finally, the 5th strategy would be to practice inner compassion. Reframe your inner dialogue by empathizing with the parts of you that may feel betrayed because you're leaving them behind, or resentful because you haven't been listening to their needs. To help you reflect further, here's a journal prompt. What are 3 expectations I feel pressured to meet right now? And this is both for moms and dads. Which of these truly align with my values, and which might come from external influences or past experiences? How can I adjust my choices to honor my current priorities without feeling guilt or shame? This journaling exercise can help you align your actions with your values while also releasing the unnecessary guilt that follows change that we may feel is not necessarily the most warranted in a time where things are a bit more hectic, in a time where as parents we start to feel like we need to be making more calculated decisions, in a time where things are supposed to be as calm as possible, as predicted as possible, so that we can weather all the things that come with childhood transitions, developmental stages, and all the things. Thank you for tuning in. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling seen, inspired, and equipped with tools to navigate your own parenting journey. If you found this episode helpful, please share it with someone who may need it. Oh, and by the way, don't forget to check out Hannah's links below. She has gifted us with so many resources. She is an extraordinary individual and professional. I've been in her world for a while, and so I would love for you to check her out and see what she's all about. Until next time, just remember, you're doing an amazing job. See you next Sunday.